Early this year, the contact appears without warning. Not at the edge of radar coverage, not drifting in from civilian airspace. It materializes already moving, high speed, steady altitude, cutting across a surveillance sector NATO monitors constantly. No transponder response, no flight plan correlation, no commercial squawk. A controller flags it, another double checks, a third confirms the track hasn't ghosted in from sensor error. It's clean, stable, real. The track doesn't behave like lost traffic. It doesn't climb. It doesn't descend. It doesn't divert. It holds course, holds speed, and continues deeper. A timer appears on the controller's display. Time to protected airspace. Less than 4 minutes. The classification updates. Unknown. Uncooperative. The duty officer leans in. Confirmed track continuity. Confirmed. The contact crosses a sector boundary, one it shouldn't reach without clearance. The classification shifts again. Potentially hostile. A cursor moves. A command is queued. The clock keeps counting down. The scramble order moves before the contact resolves. Inside the control room, the air picture shifts from monitoring to management. Civilian traffic controllers begin clearing lanes away from the projected track, issuing reroutes with minimal explanation. Commercial flights comply, unaware that their paths are being adjusted around something that refuses to identify itself. Secondary radars are cued to hold focus. Filters are stripped away. Operators widen tolerances normally reserved for clutter rejection, trading clarity for persistence. An airborne warning aircraft pivots its scan pattern, rotating its radar cone to keep the unknown centered as long as possible. The track is handed off, then handed back again, as overlapping sensors try to stabilize what no single system can hold on its own. The aircraft doesn't react. It doesn't alter altitude. It doesn't deviate from course. It doesn't acknowledge repeated challenge calls transmitted across multiple frequencies. Each unanswered call tightens the timeline. On the tactical display, intercept geometry updates automatically. Lines converge, numbers shrink. What was measured in minutes now compresses toward seconds. The unknown is inside the buffer where hesitation creates its own danger. A supervisor watches the timer roll down and says nothing. The order has already been given. On the apron, alert fighters sit fueled and armed. Pilots sealed into cockpits while data loads silently into their displays. Ground crews pull away without ceremony. Engines spool, their sound bleeding through the control room feed as confirmation that the response is no longer theoretical. The launch is procedural, not dramatic. Executed because the clock leaves no alternative. The fighters lift and climb hard, accelerating toward a point that keeps moving as the unknown advances. As they pass through assigned altitude blocks, their sensors begin searching independently, no longer reliant solely on ground cueing. Fire control radars remain cold. Tracking modes engage instead. Infrared systems scan ahead, slaved to predicted intercept points, looking for any heat contrast against the thin air at altitude. Still, nothing changes. The unknown aircraft neither accelerates nor evades. It holds speed and heading as if the response unfolding around it doesn't exist, or was already accounted for. Then, just as the intercept vectors converge, the radar return weakens. Not abruptly, not cleanly. The track degrades in fragments. Partial returns blink in and out. Controllers begin calling headings based on interpolation rather than certainty, stitching position estimates together faster than the displays can refresh. The fighters push anyway. The intercept collapses into a narrowing box of empty sky. Controllers feed vectors in rapid succession now, adjusting headings as the last reliable returns decay. The fighters accelerate through the projected intercept point, throttles forward, radars sweeping wider arcs as uncertainty replaces geometry. Inside the cockpit, the tactical display refuses to settle. Numbers update, then lag. Predicted positions slide ahead of where the sensors want them to be. The target exists only as math. The lead aircraft reports intermittent noise where a return should be. Not a lock, not even a stable track. Just momentary spikes, ghosts that vanish before the system can commit. Wingmen see the same thing. Each spike tempts the sensors to grab hold, and each time the signal collapses before correlation can complete. The data isn't false, but it isn't usable either. The unknown aircraft is still being calculated, not tracked. On the ground, operators attempt to rebuild the picture by force. Radars overlap sectors. Airborne warning platforms cross queue. Controllers query space-based feeds, scrubbing for any correlated pass that might have crossed the area at the same moment. Nothing resolves. The fighters push through the last predicted intercept volume anyway, crossing paths at altitude where the contact should be. Radars remain active. Infrared sensors push to maximum sensitivity, searching for any residual heat bloom that might betray propulsion or exhaust. The sky stays empty. Fuel clocks begin to matter. Controllers compress their calls, issuing headings faster to keep the search volume tight. The fighters fan outward, flying expanding arcs through the last known geometry, trying to bracket a target that no longer behaves like a target. Each pass burns minutes they don't have. Then the remaining fragments disappear. No final spike, no turnaway cue. No descent signature. The track doesn't exit coverage. It simply stops existing as something that can be followed. For several seconds, no one speaks. Then the order comes, quiet, procedural, stripped of urgency. Terminate intercept. The fighters acknowledge. Throttles ease back. Search patterns collapse into return headings. The aircraft turn for home, leaving behind a volume of air that offers no evidence anything was ever there. The jets land without ceremony. Engines wind down on the apron while air crews are directed straight past routine shutdown procedures and into debrief rooms. Voice recorders are pulled immediately. Radar logs are flagged and locked. Sensor timelines begin syncing across platforms that were never meant to be perfectly aligned in real time. The incident is reconstructed in layers. First as raw data, primary radar sweeps, secondary returns, track files stitched together from multiple sites. Then again, with human inputs added, controller calls, pilot reports, timing annotations marked down to the second. The gaps don't close. Primary radar confirms a solid, continuous track across multiple sweeps before degradation begins. Secondary radar never resolves a response. There is no emergency code, no intermittent squawk, no moment where identification almost happens. Infrared logs offer little help. No sustained heat source appears where one should. No exhaust bloom fades with distance. There is nothing consistent enough to argue that the aircraft simply outran detection. What draws the most attention is how the track fails. The returns don't scatter the way clutter does. They don't drift the way atmospheric interference does. They weaken in steps, partial, selective, forcing controllers to keep predicting instead of tracking. That distinction matters. Tracking closes uncertainty. Prediction extends it. And uncertainty is expensive. As analysts replay the intercept timeline, the cost becomes clear. Each prediction window burned seconds. Each seconds-long gap widened intercept geometry. By the time the fighters reached the projected point, they were already chasing a future position that no longer existed. Engineers check calibration next. Antenna alignments are verified. Power levels are reviewed. Software versions are cross-checked against known issues. Operators are interviewed separately to rule out expectation bias or procedural error. Nothing explains the failure cleanly. No single system fault. No human error chain. No environmental condition large enough to account for total loss. Which leaves the residue no one wants to label yet. If the aircraft was conventional, it shouldn't have vanished this way. If it wasn't, then the scramble itself becomes the most valuable output of the encounter. Response timelines, sensor activation thresholds, intercept geometry, command decision points. All of it was revealed, captured in logs, visible to anyone watching closely enough, because someone chose to press just far enough to trigger the system without ever being forced to declare. That possibility doesn't appear in the official summary. but it shapes every internal conversation that follows. Modern air defense doctrine is built on an assumption of resolution. An unknown contact is detected, pressured, and compelled to clarify. By transponder response, by maneuver, or by proximity. Even when identification fails, escalation is supposed to narrow uncertainty until the defender is forced to act, or the intruder is forced to withdraw. This incident breaks that logic. Every procedural step worked as designed. Detection occurred early. Classification escalated correctly. Response timelines were met. Fighters launched inside doctrinal windows. Sensor coverage layered as intended. And still, the outcome remained unresolved. That exposes a structural weakness. Air defense relies on thresholds, points where ambiguity gives way to action. Those thresholds are meant to constrain the intruder by steadily removing options. But when an aircraft can cross multiple thresholds without being forced into clarity, the thresholds stop functioning as constraints and start functioning as signals. The defender shows posture. The intruder shows nothing. That asymmetry matters more than the aircraft itself. It means the act of scrambling, normally a deterrent, can be inverted. The response becomes the payload. Reaction times, sensor activations, coordination mechanics, and command pacing are all revealed in real time to anyone deliberately provoking them. No weapons are required. No violation needs to be sustained. The system is pressured simply by being exercised. This shifts escalation control. Instead of forcing the intruder to choose between compliance and confrontation, the defender is forced to choose between constant reaction and selective hesitation. Each choice carries risk. React too often and readiness erodes. Hesitate once and the cost of being wrong spikes sharply. Doctrine assumes the unknown will eventually resolve. This incident suggests it doesn't have to. If uncertainty can be preserved all the way through response execution, then uncertainty itself becomes an operational effect, one that sits below the threshold of open confrontation but steadily reshapes behavior. And once doctrine is bent that way, it doesn't snap back quickly. The scramble ends, but the pressure doesn't. From that point forward, every unidentified track is judged in the shadow of this one. Contacts that might once have been filtered as transient noise are held longer. Challenge calls are issued earlier. Scramble thresholds compress, not because doctrine changes on paper, but because confidence erodes in practice. That shift carries cumulative cost. Fighters launch more often, sometimes for contacts that resolve harmlessly. Crews cycle through alert status faster than planned. Maintenance windows tighten. Command centers operate at a higher baseline of tension, spending more time managing ambiguity than confirming certainty. Airspace doesn't become weaker. It becomes brittle. This is how escalation pressure builds without confrontation. Not through a single dramatic incident, but through repetition. Each unresolved encounter adding friction to a system designed for clarity. An actor capable of provoking response without being fixed in place forces defenders into a narrowing corridor of choice. React every time and accept readiness drain. Hesitate once and accept the risk of being wrong at exactly the wrong moment. Neither option is stable. Over time, judgment compresses. Decisions that once had minutes are made in seconds. Commanders lean harder on intuition and pattern recognition because the data no longer guarantees closure. The system shifts from confirmation-based defense to assumption-based defense. That's where danger accumulates, because the most volatile moment isn't the first intrusion. It's the one that follows several disappearances, when everyone involved assumes the pattern will repeat, right up until the moment it doesn't. The fighters returned. The logs were filed. The air pictures stabilized. But somewhere between first detection and total disappearance, a boundary was crossed. One that revealed how the system reacts, how fast it commits, and how much uncertainty it's willing to tolerate. And the next time an unknown contact appears, the most dangerous assumption may not be who sent it, but that it will vanish again.